Yes. More nasty.
No more Tom Graham jokes.
Yeah, he won't get out. Yes.
Although he wouldn't care. No. And wait. Went down for the Thursday night.
They have been, and I'm really glad that the band's
Original.
begins with the street.
Years before.
Yeah,
on
but
that
the-
block.
the
Oh, yeah, over there.
Yes.
Because that was permission for everybody to get out into the street.
Yeah.
I think when band had the band
Yeah.
stole the corner.
And-
people were
and-
heading to the dock.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, his son?
People were showing up with chairs.
Yeah,
We're in
I
the
think-
street.
Tree trimming on that side street.
And sort of staying
Oh, did he?
apartments.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that bit little tick.
A lot of positive things
Yeah,
happen.
I think it's interesting.
I'll tell you about it.
Putting the, I think putting the umbrellas.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Remember, one of those same ideas.
Because I don't think I've ever-
You should have.
Yeah, and I know.
And we have some people in the dog.
I
I think so.
Just-
You do remember those days.
Mark.
Right.
That just-
That's pretty amazing.
So it's interesting, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Oracle.
Yeah, we're gonna do that.
I can't wait.
I usually, well, I have to go through and verify this.
Almost dialogue.
I just look through.
Okay.
So is there a rematch in this?
Well, maybe.
But I'll go into our.
Played my wife on Saturday. There's music, and I played it.
I would assume it'll be.
And, she said, rig the boards. So she's mad at me. So, yeah.
Okay, now she doesn't understand how cornhole works, right?
She does, you know.
Rigging a cornhole game would be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I can vouch for it. She didn't get better as she went on.
I don't know what that's.
I don't.
I'd have to read back.
Still working on that.
Sure, look up why it was called.
I've never had all the
Corn belly.
But it was corn because the game that was instituted was corn was plentiful.
Okay.
So.
Did I
So they
really
used corn in the
say-
bags instead of being something that had money, more monitored.
He's gone now.
Where?
This kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what the big.
But there are
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
world champions.
Yeah.
Yeah, they happen
Yeah,
upon them.
yeah.
Hard to say.
The other
No.
thing
That's
is-
big and very.
But that's good for her.
We don't
Those guys are good.
Yeah, they are
Oh,
remarkable.
nothing compared.
I found that, I mean, like, I found that really interesting.
Her, that's good.
We didn't even play against other people.
Later.
Well, we need warning.
But I guess
because
we
we
can
can
warn
have
We actually need it. Yeah, I was on the fight last week. And I was. Scott Reese, I think
Yeah.
that-
Do the best.
Your boss
It was
can
right
take some
before.
time out.
They did both.
Actually, sitting trying to get caught up on runner things. So far, I got a meeting in 2 weeks. So we'll see.
You know,
Been there, done that, it's great motivator.
yes,
We'll give her a go.
Well,
See
I
what
think
happens.
I was, it was music.
Guys, what they do?
Double third.
These things usually take 2 or 3 goes at it. Especially now, when the county, they're going through millage ask. So she is. That's very pleasant.
That's
That's very, it's not right, but it's.
Come together.
It's just.
It is a good day. That's my favorite. Which is always longer than session.
I mean, maybe we need to. Yeah, some, yeah, because it's.
Rachel.
Because I didn't.
Might get more help or something.
Jim Raynor. No, well, it's-
Make sure.
Yeah, it
Basically, all I'm doing is replacing.
Yeah.
Rotating around. I've been watching.
And as our.
It's,
Job, so it's. You see the same people. This man.
Opportunity, but they're nice.
Jan, Pierce, Country Club.
Nice.
Yeah, oh, and Boyd, pretty much everybody.
Yeah, a lot of passive
I had no task for a day. I'd been over there in a month. And everyone still has their help on it. It's just.
Yeah,
it's gonna be way more- Today's gonna be. I'm there playing through like, do away with
There's a whole nother.
stuff. Kind of forced me to go back to work. I don't know how much of that. It is, I think a lot in the restaurant.
Always feel like we should.
Couldn't make a living.
Our town, I mean, that dress shirt.
Yeah, so, you know, I.
No, I thought.
Actually, so they had.
Yeah, it's a.
No, I sit around so long. A lot of people shifted. You got no idea.
I went over there. And well, it's business.
But I did notice.
Sorry about everybody. I've talked with everybody that was trying to hire too.
They were all like. Yeah, but I think you're gonna see it. I think in the first of the year, I think you're gonna see like that.
I'm sorry, I should be out there. You know, I think it was like, they were all like that. I was like, I couldn't.
Yeah, we were all like
that. My husband and wife got into an argument. Now I know I should, you know, finally I came across that. Well, that's why everybody's listening, I'll take advantage.
Yeah, it was fall. I think that's spring, summer. That's what all the big shots are saying.
Yeah. Funny because I saw that. I was like,
Just making it, shoving it all over. We don't cycle better than they do up here. Yeah. Give them the prosperous summers, long winters.
Market doing a great job. Floors are in, walls are up. Cool. They're really hustling.
He's got 2 more projects ready for him.
And that'll motivate them to get mine done.
All right, 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. All rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Matt Bugera,
I am here.
John Leo,
Here.
Nancy Rondell.
Here.
Al Dyka here, and John Cox. We do have a quorum.
And it's citizens' comment time, and you're here to address the council about anything that's not on the agenda. This is your chance.
I'd like to quickly introduce Nick Strobel. He's our new full-time officer. Mitchell left to go to Traverse City, and
Nick was kind enough to work part-time with us while working full-time with the tribe, so he picked up like 1 or 2 days a week, so basically he was working 6 or 7 days. And then our full-time position came open, and everybody in our department really liked the work that Nick was doing, and he sort of put a team over there, and he was part of our team. So Nick's graduated from Petoskey. He's 25 years old, bought a house over on Country Club, and the first week that he worked full-time, I got 2 compliments on him already, so I'm very happy with Nick. So
Thank you, guys. I'm excited.
he's a great addition, and he's going to be here for a long time.
Yes.
We like to hear.
Speaking of new hires, I'd like to introduce Rachel Roon, our new Parks and Recreation Director. She comes from Comstock Township. She worked there for about 7 years.
You're 9 years.
Oh, 9 years with your internship, yeah. So I'm excited to have her on board in a full-time position, and hopefully you guys get to introduce yourselves to her if you haven't already.
Good job.
Thank you.
Anyone else for citizens comment? Name and address, please.
Pam Torchinsky, 465 State Street. So a couple of weeks ago, I came in and asked if I could have some help with my short-term rental next door to me in a really dangerous fire pit situation. And they moved the fire pit, so I think somebody from city came and helped me out. I wanted to come back and say thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, positive comment.
All right.
We did have the fire chief go and visit, so.
Matt, I'm Bill Mulder. I'm on the planning commission. I'm going to follow up on short-term rental topic. We are going to be holding a public information session on short-term rentals on August 24th, Tuesday night, from 6 to 7:30. We'll be here. Everybody's invited, and it'll be a chance to have a two-way discussion. It won't be under the formal Robert's Rules of Order, and it's a format that we use for a housing meeting a few weeks ago, and it was very good. So we'd love to have you there. Love to have everybody there, and we'll talk it through together.
Anyone else?
Rebecca Backus, 500 West Summit. I wanted to talk about July 4th, which was a very nice day. I thought it went well with chairs, but I was a little disappointed in the parade. And I was told that you had to pay to be in the parade this year. Is that a true rumor or not?
I'm not sure. All I know, the chamber is the one who selects the parade entrance. So I don't know what their rules and criteria are for entering the parade. I didn't hear you at the pay, but Bonnie Culp, I can reach out to her, like, director of the chamber, to see what.
Because it just
Process
seemed
for
to
that.
be a little skinny this year.
It was skinny this year. And there's a lot of different, I think there's a multitude of reasons for that. People that have time to prepare,
COVID thing and all
some of that.
or because there's a rumor going around that you had to pay.
I'll double check. I can't confirm that, so I'll double check with Bonnie back on that one.
Okay.
Anyone else? Perfect. Anyone on the computer? Anyone on the computer want to talk to us?
Check YouTube. Nope.
Perfect. We can move on to the consent agenda. Objections? From the table?
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
First, let's say we get any comments from the
No comments.
public, yeah, before we approve it. If there's any comment about what's on the consent agenda. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a first and a second.
Who's the second?
This one.
All right, Nancy Rondell,
Yes.
Al Dyka,
Yes.
Matt O'Gara,
Yes.
John Cups,
Yep.
and John Leo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right.
It's your show, Victor.
So we are going to do our presentation on the Headlee override ballot proposal. We put this on the website. We made some edits to it as well after getting some feedback. And we just want to take this as another opportunity to show council what the aspects of this proposal are, as well as to reach more people, essentially. More people watch council meetings than other meetings. So I just want to go through this, and then Nick and I can, if you have any questions about any of the aspects of this proposal, we'll answer them. So at the November 2nd 2021 meeting, which is the first Tuesday in November, we are going to ask the Harbor Springs voters to override the limitations imposed by the Headlee rollback. The Headlee rollback is an amendment to the Constitution that requires a city to reduce its millage when annual growth on existing property is greater than the rate of inflation. The intentions of Headlee were to ensure that revenue collected on a millage, a specific millage such as a road millage or a parks millage, did not exceed the anticipated cost of that project. However, the unintended effect of that was that it reduces the general operating millage as well. The city's millage rate is then rolled back so that the resulting community-wide growth in property tax revenue is no more than the rate of inflation. The consequence is that reducing revenue that would have been generated from these increased property values at a time when the cost of materials and labor is increasing. So essentially, what we're doing is reducing the tax rate as costs go up. And interestingly, if the Headlee, let's say tax properties go down, our tax rate doesn't go back up. And that's one of the key problems with Headlee is that, let's say values go down and we're at 5.8 right now, well, we still can't go up as properties go down. So just keep that in mind that we can't go back up with our tax rate, even if property values go down. So in order to counteract these negative effects, the voters have to choose to override Headlee and restore a higher millage rate. So it's up to the voters. Since this is a constitutional amendment to the state, it has to go to the vote of the people. And there's other local governments all around the state are facing this. I mean, these are just for the past few years, just a sampling. I mean, there's scores of them that are doing it this year as well as have done it in the past 2 years. We have Kalamazoo, Howell, St. John's, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Birmingham, Brighton, Allegan County, Missaukee County. There's plenty of them, and most of them have been accepted by the voters. Some have taken 2 or 3 times before they got accepted. So it's nothing new that we're doing here. We're just not doing it as often as some other communities have done it, or as often as school districts. School districts are most notorious for doing this every few years. Our Harbor Springs School does it, as well as plenty of other school districts. So the city how has this impacted the city? We've always been fiscally responsible, and we've only levied the amount of tax that is necessary to operate in each year. But with the continual reduction in the maximum allowable millage over decades, we're talking about decades here from the 70s, we have reached a point in which the allowable millage is barely covering current maintenance and operations and not able to fund any major new projects that should be funded through general fund dollars. And that's something we're focusing on here is this is our general operating millage, general fund dollars. We're not talking about the electric department or the waterfront funds or the street millage. We're talking about general fund things. And I'll cover that a little bit later about what we cover in the general fund. This map is kind of, I don't know, this graph is kind of hard to see a little bit, but the blue line here shows since 1991 what our maximum allowable millage has been. And the red line shows what the city has requested. And as you can see, in 1991, the maximum allowable had been reduced to 9.2 or so. We were levying about 7.8, 7.9. As a decade went on and the years went on and we got to this point in 2016-ish, 2015, 2016, the maximum we were allowed to levy was 6.2. And that's how much we levied. And that's been going down since then. So right now we're at a point where we're under 5.8 and that's what we're levying. So basically we can't go above that even if we wanted to or needed to. So the city charter authorizes the city to levy a millage of up to 15 mils. In the past 30 years, the highest the city has ever levied has been just under 8 mils. So we've never come close to that 15 mils rate in the last 30 years. And in the past 20 years, the city has levied around 6 mils on average. So we really haven't gone above that. But the maximum allowable millage has now decreased from the original 15 set by charter to 9 in 1991 to 5.8 mils today, and which will even be lower in 2022 as we're expecting property values have gone up and they probably will go up for the next couple of years. We're anticipating that. This means, as I said earlier, that even if needed, we can't increase the millage rate above 5.8 or whatever lower number comes next year or the year after. This means that for any significant maintenance project requiring taxpayer money, such as repaving a parking lot, the city has to dip into its reserves. If the trend continues, the city may have to consider dipping into reserves to fund basic operations or cut services. So we're not at that point yet, but this is what our fear is. In a few years, we would get to that point if we don't have a reversal of this Headlee rollback. So the city, what are we talking about when we talk about reserve funds? We have about $2.2 million in general fund reserves. This is enough to cover 8 months of general fund operations in a prolonged emergency situation where we do not have revenue coming into the city. Sound accounting practices, and they can tell you this, require us to have at least 6 months of reserves. We prefer to have between 9 months and 12 months. So we're below where our comfortable zone is. And it's only going to keep on dipping a little bit lower and lower as we dip into those reserve funds. 5 years ago, the city had over $3 million in reserve funds, which was 12 months of operating expenses. And that's the ideal situation we'd like to be in. However, we had important large projects such as the FEMA floodplain project, which have reduced our general fund balance by about 1/3. So the increase, and on top of that, the increased cost of materials, services, and operations prevent us from building up that reserve, maintaining the current infrastructure, and pursuing projects that are strongly desired and supported by the public. So there's three negative effects here. Our reserve balance is getting lower. We aren't able to maintain our current infrastructure needs, and we won't be able to pursue projects that the people want, the people believe we need. So what does the general fund represent? The general fund support? Police department is the biggest. The most amount of money goes to the police department from the general fund. Nick, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just under $1 million or.
750 to 8.
Okay, so about
depending on.
about a third of the general fund operating goes to police department, planning and zoning services, city hall staff, parks operations, maintenance improvements of buildings such as these buildings, grounds, parking lots, landscaping, tree maintenance and planning, certain contractual services such as legal and engineering services, IT services, assessing, clerk and treasurer operations, and more. Recycling is another one. So there's a whole list of services and operations underneath the general fund. Again, the general fund is not electric, roads, water, sewer, but it's basically everything else. So how has the city remained fiscally responsible? Well, we've delayed several large city projects. Is that sustainable in the long run? Probably not, but that's how we've been trying to maintain fiscally responsible, by delaying projects such as the boardwalk, streetscape improvements, and parks renovations. We reduced the size and scope of certain projects, such as cutting back the spillway landscaping, limiting the scope of summer improvements. We've also delayed things that we probably should be doing soon or should have done, like replacing our roofs, replacing our air conditioner at City Hall, things like that. We've reorganized and reduced staff, such as eliminating full-time City Hall positions, kind of switching it with a part-time position. We've looked for inefficiencies and eliminated unnecessary spending. I mean, one of them has been making a difference and will in the long run is going paperless. This whole scheme here costs us some money, but in the long run, we've already saved hundreds. I think last year it was over $1,000 in paper and ink costs. So we're saving a lot of money going the paperless route. And we've been applying for grants and pursuing donations, tree plantings, resurfacing and pickleball courts. We had over $8,500 in donations and grant awards, donations for picnic tables, which are all great things. But you only can rely on donations for so much, especially for people tend to donate for more of the shinier things that are visible. No one wants to donate for a new air conditioner at City Hall, at least that I know of. The public surveys also show what our wants and needs are. I mean, the surveys have shown from our master plan surveys to our Parks and Rec surveys, we want a continued levels of police presence, increase and improve zoning and planning administration. They want educated, experienced staff, modernized facilities and equipment. They want to see major improvements to the parks, including the waterfront parks, as you see with Marina Park and Ford Park, and renovations at Kiwanis Park, and the skate park. A variety of year-round events and recreation programming for people of all ages, beautification of city property and public lands, and a greater urban tree canopy. These are just some of our wants and needs that we've pulled out as major, where the public has showed that they want to see some major improvements or additions to. So what happens if the voters don't vote to override Headlee? Well, the cities will probably have to eventually cut back on services. I mean, that's really staff services, something to that effect. And that could mean eliminating recycling, eliminating City Hall staff, reducing the 24/7 police coverage, reducing zoning enforcement and administration, eliminating lifeguards. These are all things we don't want to do, but in a few years, something we might have to do. The other option is to delay fixing and maintaining much of our aging infrastructure. A lot of our parks buildings are 50 years old and haven't had any maintenance done on them. These new buildings are about 20 years old here, City Hall and the police department. Need to have the roofs changed, need to have parking lots repaved. Those things are things that either you have to delay or not do if we don't have the money to do them. And then aside of that, there will also be no improvements, no major projects to our parks and facilities. I mean, we just don't have the money. We can't dip in our reserves. We cannot, definitely not go below that 6-month mark. That would be a major ding in our finances, but we don't even want to be below where we're at right now, which is 8 months reserves. So some of this has to happen. We have to cut back services or we have to delay maintenance of our current infrastructure. I believe we've seen this chart before where we compare in taxes compared to other cities. So this bottom blue is the general operating millage. As you can see, compared to neighboring cities, Petoskey, Charlevoix, Boyne City, and East Jordan, we are far below both on operating millage and total millage. So the city overall with our road millage, which was it 1 mil or 2 mils?
There's 1 mil. Now that also has been reduced to below 9/10 of a mil.
So we're at about 6.6 mils overall, 6.6, 6.7 mils overall for the city taxes. Whereas you look at Charlevoix, the next lowest, with all their millage combined are about 11. Petoskey's near 14. Boyne City and East Jordan are at about 17. And so you see how there's a different combination of how they get to those points, but that's where they're at. And some of these cities they're doing a lot of improvements to their town. Boyne City, for example, has a lot going on, and it shows with the millage they've returned, but also with what's going on down there. By no means does the city ever want to get to this point, but I just want to show where we compare to other northern Michigan, northwest Michigan towns. So our millage rate, like I said, is just above 6 mils. That rate is 60% less than the rate in Boyne City and East Jordan, half the rate of Petoskey and Charlevoix. A low millage rate is a good thing, and I think that's important to stress. The city doesn't see a need to increase our millage to anywhere near the levels that any of those cities are at. But if we cannot control our own millage rate, meaning we can't adjust it up by 0.2 or 0.3 or 0.4 mils if need be 1 year to do some maintenance projects or to keep our services, then we won't be able to provide those services to our community or improve our infrastructure. In order to keep and attract employees, as well as year-round families and resorters, we want to keep this city at that top A grade level that we like it at, right? And right now we're not at that level because of our decaying infrastructure. That's a huge thing that you see the houses, plenty of beautiful houses, great downtown, but if you look at our buildings on city property, they don't represent what a great town should look like. So voting yes on the head, so here's a ballot question. So voting yes will allow the city to remain fiscally responsible while delivering the services and improvements residents want. So what does the city, we talk about uncapping the millage to 15 mils. That's because that's what the charter, it's in the charter. I said that's the set rate. But that does not mean that the city wants to or will raise the millage rate to 15 mils. The city charter established the 15 mils as the authorized maximum millage rate. Due to Headlee, that authorized maximum rate will decrease. So for example, if the city voters uncapped to 15 mils, the city levies 6.3 mils next year. If the city levies 6.3 mils again in 2023, Headlee will have reduced the maximum rate to 14.7 or some other number close to that based on the current trends. So after several years, we'll be at this point again where the millage will be in single digits, and we'll come to this point maybe in 15 years, maybe sooner, maybe later, where we have to ask this question again. All right, we can't sustain our current operations with that millage. We have to uncap it or raise it. By uncapping to 15, as opposed to a lower number, we won't have to come back to the residents again for another ask for probably decades. If we uncap to 9, it'd probably be asking again in 10 to 15 years, which we talked about this at our previous council meetings, and this is the route we decided to go. The good thing about this ballot language to reassure the voters is that it prevents the city from raising the millage rate by any more than a half a mil in any given year, and only after satisfaction of all requirements of the Michigan General Property Tax Act. So that means council has to approve it based on holding a public hearing and based on if that's what we need to do. For example, do we need to maintain that specific infrastructure? How much is it going to cost? it's gonna cost us $100,000, then the city clerk will go back to the finances and say, all right, to raise $100,000, we need to raise the mills by 0.3 mils this year, or 0.4 mils, whatever it is. Maybe the year after that, we might say, or maybe 4 years down the road, we did everything we need to do. Maybe this year we're not gonna raise it. Maybe we're gonna lower it. Maybe we're gonna raise it by only 0.1. This gives us that flexibility to raise and or lower as needed, but it caps us at 0.5 in any given year. So that way it prevents council and the city staff from saying, let's go to 15, let's go to 10, let's go to 8. It's a more conservative approach and more careful approach, I would say, to raising taxes if need be. The city has also historically levied between 6 and 8 mils. So just even a small increase from that current 5.8 mils will get us back in that range of what we historically have raised in the past 30 years. And will allow us to go a long way in helping us maintain our infrastructure and making improvements to our city. So what does this really mean for the average person and the average household? So the average household has a taxable value of about $100,000 in Harbor Springs. That's a monthly increase of $4 in their taxes, or a yearly $50 increase. That is for your average homestead. So if someone with a principal residence exemption, the average non-homestead would see probably an increase of $60 if we increase by 0.5 mils. Of course, as you see, if your taxable value is all the way at $2 million, you'll have a larger increase, of $1,000. So, but the average is, it's good to keep in mind that the average is in between, is at around $100,000, and most people are in this $100,000 to $200,000 range of taxable value. So this is just some basic knowledge information. What is taxable value? The taxable value is capped the year after you purchase your home. So if you purchased your home in 2000, your taxable value is capped there. It only goes up for inflation, or 5%, whichever is less. New construction also increases taxable value, which has a side effect of reducing the allowable millage. So let's say you add new construction to your home, or let's say there's a new building that goes up. Well, yes, your tax value is uncapped, but that lowers it for everyone else, the city as a whole. It goes to a lower rate because of the increased taxable tax value on the roll. So the taxable value can also never exceed the assessed value. It's also good to know when you guys get your taxes, where does your tax money go? The city collects taxes on behalf of the county, school district, and other taxing entities. So for principal residents, only about 1/4 of your taxes actually goes to the city. As you see, about 46% goes to Harbor Springs schools, 22% goes to the Emmett County, and 8% goes to other entities like, I think, the college and the cemetery. So really, when you get your tax bill, we're the ones that collect it. So people see this tax bill coming from Harbor Springs, they see, oh my gosh, my taxes are at several thousands of dollars, $4,000 or $5,000. Well, really only 1,000 of that is going to the city. If you're a homesteader, if you're a non-homesteader, it's even less, only about 10% or less is going to the city. So there's sometimes this misconception that I just pay the city $8,000, $10,000 or $5,000 in taxes. Why do you guys want more? Well, as you see, most of that, 3/4 of it is not going to the city. It's going to the county. We're just the bad guys collecting the money from the county, the schools. So to make matters worse, and this is something that, I don't know if we recognize here, the state of Michigan is dead last in the country for its financial support of municipalities. The state of Michigan, so this, if you go to, I believe it's savemicities.org, they have all these graphics on there. They show how, compared to all other states, the state government supports its municipalities the least. And so when we run into problems is that because of Headlee and other issues, overall municipalities since between 2008 and 2012 have lost 13% of their taxable value. And all municipalities together have lost $8.6 billion in state revenue sharing since 2002. So we're seeing we have a state government that doesn't really support municipalities. So we rely heavily on property taxes to fund what we need to get done here. As you can see, 50% of what happens in our city comes from property tax. And this is on average municipality. Ours is a little higher because our grants and other sources aren't as high as other cities. So voting yes on the Headlee override ballot will allow the city to remain fiscally responsible while maintaining our infrastructure and making the needed and desired improvements. The average taxpayer will see a very slight increase in their tax bill on an annual basis, based on that 0.5 mils increase cap. So that is a presentation that we have on our website that we hope to have more of these discussions with residents. We have a couple more meetings, one in July and one in August here at City Council. Here at the City Hall chambers. We also have lunches and we're going to coffee groups in the morning. So we sent out information and tax bills to people. We put out an article in the Harbor Light, hopefully to do one or two more to educate residents about the issue here and at least for them to make informed decisions when they go into the voting booth. I think what's really important to understand though, that at some point, we'll have to make a serious decision if the voters vote no. And we'll have to make a serious decision as a council about how we're going to continue to fund operations and services and maintain our infrastructure. This is not a dire situation in the next year or two, but in the long run, we're looking at what we talked about earlier is potentially cutting services if this doesn't go through. And if the voters want that, then the voters will speak about that. But I've heard a lot of feedback from a lot of people that that's not what they want. They want to maintain their level of services. They want to see more improvements. They want to see more maintenance. And this is really the best way to go about it. We discuss other options such as separate villages, such as for parks or public safety or not. And those only put a Band-Aid on certain issues. They don't solve the overall problem of our not being able to levy the appropriate amount that we need to address all the issues of the city holistically. That's the presentation, and if anyone has questions about it, feel free to ask now or come see Nick or I at City Hall or Jeff Grimm. He provide a lot of the assessing and taxable value information here as well. So
Yes, by any means, if you don't have questions at the moment, if you think of some, I'm here all the time, come in, ask, we'll talk about it. And it's a difficult concept to even understand, let alone try to explain. So at any point, anybody that has questions or know of somebody that would need more information, just reach out to us, we're here.
So yeah, any kind of questions from council members?
Nice job on the presentation.
Thank you. Feedback.
They actually made it so I can understand it.
It's
perfect.
really distilled, as Nick said, this is not a trivial concept and it's a difficult sell and you've really done a good job of distilling it down. And I think makes a lot of sense.
Well done.
Moving on to item B, which is a harbor plan update, initial discussion. So Councilmember Dyka had emailed, it was about a month ago, a little bit over, about after the discussions that we had at council and harbor commission about Ford Park, about the need to go back and update our harbor plan, which is dated from 2003 was the last update. And I briefly talked about this with our harbor master, and he said, yeah, a lot of this data is old, and a lot of this information is old. So Alex, I guess to get your perspective on what you were thinking, beyond just a simple update, if there was anything in particular about the harbor plan.
We've only updated it once since it was adopted. And 2003, it's a lot has changed around here since 2003. One of the neat things that's in the harbor plan is a real great inventory of what we have on the harbor. Properties, different uses, how many boats are in the water, how many docks are in the water, and all of that stuff. And when you read it, it's put together well. You really start to get a picture of, if we were to expand the 2-hour dock, why Harbor Commission hesitates to do things like that. It's largely landside issues, but it looks like we're protecting those that have a spot and not letting anybody else in, is what I hear. And that's just not true. The issues are landside mostly, and I think we need to look and see how the data has changed, if at all. I think it's changed significantly, especially when you consider that the point is in that plan. It's part of that plan, and it's the number of boats that the point is contributing to the traffic on the water is much different than it was in 2003. You can see that if you have a boat and you go by, and what used to be one dock now has one dock coming out and then 5 slips at the end of it. So it's stuff like that that we need to look at. I had hoped that we would, these could run concurrent with the master plan because they are linked. But that's not possible, so we just get some data and take a look and see if we need to change it.
I think the data is a good point. I think also some of the goals are also either achieved or outdated as well in the harbor plan.
That's true.
And that's, I know you're talking about concurrently with the master plan, but I think once we get the master plan done, we'll at least have a guide now to build off of the harbor plan. And plus, we're also working on Parks and Rec plan, long master planning. There's a lot of overlap between the harbor plan and the Parks and Rec plan, so it'd be good to, kind of work on these maybe at the same time. So I think it's a good idea. I would want to wait until the master plan is done. I mean, it should be done in fall, but it doesn't mean we can't start doing some research here and there on it. It's not. I'd probably maybe go see if, how involved the Harbor Commission can be. And I don't know how involved they were in this first one.
We hired Dick Babcock to collect the data,
Okay.
do the inventory. He did a spectacular job. And I doubt if we'd ever talk him into doing it again, but I'm sure we have someone here in town that has the skill. We could hire someone to collect all that data and then you start digesting it, see what happens.
Now, this would be managed by the Harbor Commission.
Yes,
So to me, the question would go to the Harbor Commission. It does interlink with other work that's being done, but if the Harbor Commission wants to start the project, start the process, figure out who's gonna do what, go for it. Why wait?
yeah.
If it were the Planning Commission that's gonna do that, that wouldn't work. But if the Harbor Commission wants to take the initiative and start, and then begin to interact with the other plans, sooner the better.
I think for the research part, that's a good question. I just don't want to make sure we get to the point first where we know what our goals are for the waterfront and the master plan before we start making goals for our harbor plan. Because those are the parts that are gonna.
And I agree, but I think it's gonna take a while for the Harbor Commission to embrace it, get started, figure out who's doing what, and reach out and figure out how to tie in. If we wait until the master plan is done,
Bring it up at the
then
next.
that'll just get started. After that, we're gonna lose, I think, some useful time. And I don't think there's a big risk in doing that now.
And I also see if you develop these goals for the master plan, they could really conflict with the data that the harbor plan would have gathered and their conclusions might be quite different. It'd be better if, if they work together on that part.
Start the discussions earlier. Because I'm sure it'll take a while to really, just like it did with the master plan, well, how are we going to go about it? Who's gonna do what, and how long is it gonna take? Is it realistic? I'd start the discussions. You can always stop if you realize that there's a conflict or there's no interest or there's no resources. But why not take to the Harbor Commission, which only meets so many times a year?
Something the planning commission did with Parks and Recreation was actually take out a lot of the section on Parks and Rec because we're working on a master plan for Parks and Rec and say, hey, you know what, we're not gonna focus as heavily on this. And so they kind of took out, revamped some of their goals, which I think made it easier because they weren't the experts into, get the data for Parks and Recreation. So I see something similar with the Harbor Commission, though, the Harbor Plan focuses more, not only, but more on the water aspect of things, right? The Planning Commission is really concerned about the land side use of things. So there is some overlap there.
But they overlap. You
But
can't build more docks till you have
Yeah,
more parking.
exactly. There's things like that, right?
So it's,
We're talking about canoes, kayak space here at Zoll Street Beach. You see, we talked about that, Nancy, how packed it is here at Zoll Street Beach. I mean, it's 15 years ago, it probably wasn't like that. So I can take this to the Harbor Commission and see if they're.
I can float it and see what the commission says.
I think they should start thinking about it, at least for their go-getters, they can start working on it.
yeah, I think they could especially start searching for a person that'll
Right.
do the stuff that Babcock did before. And that was most of it. Once we had that data, it was pretty easy to just start looking at the existing plan and see that, oh, this has changed a whole bunch. We have to change this or eliminate it or add more. So, yeah, I agree with you.
To float the idea.
Awesome, thanks. We'll move on to, before we go into closed session, go to any of the other topics. We did have, before it goes to the manager report, a tree advisory board member, Patrick Wise.
I contacted Mr. White.
He said he wants to be, he came to a tree board meeting,
So
and if you guys want to appoint him.
I'd be more than happy to appoint Mr. White.
If he was
as the tree
proactive and
board.
showed up at the meeting, grab him.
He was there and he expressed a lot of interest in being part of it, so that was great.
Yes,
Yeah, I think that was great.
that'll be easy. I'll just call him and congratulate him on his new
Good.
position.
All right, take that as a consensus, yes, by council. We also have an applicant for the zoning board of appeals that we just got today, so I know, exciting. Huh?
That is
It's
exciting.
hard to get someone to join on the ZBA. So.
Hey.
Are you volunteering?
I'm already on it.
Yeah. So we'll get that to you at the next,
Yeah, are we looking for someone for Marina Park?
we are, it's not as, I mean, we're down one person, if someone wants because John Wayman had resigned, so we're looking for someone else, but we still have 8 people on that board, so it's not urgent like the ZBA or.
Still have a quorum.
All right, I'll go to the city manager's report real quick. Mentioned we made a couple hires here. We have Rachel starting. Deputy Treasurer Cashier Kathy Sasson has left us for our Harbor Springs Sewer Authority. So still kind of working indirectly for the city, so we wish her the best, but I think we actually filled this position. They're not starting till August 2nd, so that is exciting. It comes from Petoskey, so. Surface improvements to the Methodist Church parking lot have begun. We're supposed to have those by contract done by July 15th, but a lot of delays with construction and stuff, so they'll be hopefully done next week. And pickleball court project has been delayed a few weeks. Again, back order of supplies. Good news there, I mentioned earlier, we received $7,800 in donations and a $1,000 grant for the community foundation, so that really helped make a good chunk of that cost. The original cost was around $25,000. So we're pleased that the community came out to contribute there.
Are the pickleball courts usable now or?
Nate, you can.
They've been, the courts that are there now have been usable all season.
Yeah, they just haven't been used much.
Right.
Yeah, I've had a couple people come in and ask when are they gonna be repaved, we've been telling them soon.
Oh, it's still, they haven't been.
Yeah, exactly, they haven't been repaved, that's what we're waiting on. The fence is up, the new fence, but not paved, so hopefully soon, better. Last week we had a lot of meetings. ZBA was meeting just to approve minutes, essentially. The Harbor Commission met just to approve minutes. Planning Commission approved an extension for a previous approval and then reviewed highlights from the public housing discussion that the subcommittee had. And the tree advisory board was reviewing priorities for the upcoming year. I had not many meetings, but a couple interviews with 9 and 10 News about certain issues. We talked about increasing the need for recycling and sustainability with Emmett County Recycling and also an MPPA meeting. So kind of slow on my meetings for that month as well. So, but summertime, usually we don't have as many meetings anyway because everyone's out having fun. So yeah, I see. Anyone have any questions about any other city operations?
I did text Bonnie about the parade.
Oh.
And she said that there was charges. It's a tier system, 25, 35, 125, 135. To be modified next year. I said, asked her if she thought it had an impact on the participation. She said, no, same fees as in the past. So it sounds like they charged in the past. She said, I think it was short notice and just the unknown. They're gonna start pushing a parade in February of this coming year. So she apologized for not being here.
Thanks for checking.
Any public comment on anything before we go into closed session?
or any city council old or new business?
I have one thing I'd just like to request for the next meeting. I'd like us to have a discussion about the usage of the Zoll Street Beach. I spend a lot of time down there. We are grandkids here, you know, and I have some real health and safety concerns of some stuff that's going on down there. So not tonight, but I'd like to put it on as an agenda item. And have us maybe ask staff to do a little research in the next couple of weeks about dog beaches that allow dogs and how they handle that, because there's some, in my estimation, some really big issues down there, safety-wise, for kids and dogs. And I'd like us to be thinking about a possible temporary solution even for the rest of this summer. So I just kind of want to put that out there so we can be thinking about that in the next couple of weeks. That would be an okay thing to get as an agenda item for the next meeting.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, thanks.
Rachel can do the research.
Send Rachel.
That's what she said.
There were 22 dogs and 16 people there today. When I was there.
Our 2.5.
But it is a dog beach.
No, it's
a
not.
people beach.
It is a people beach. Yes, I've had this discussion with a number of people. Anyway, I think it's something we need to revisit because the usage of it has increased so tremendously for a lot of different reasons that I think there's really some safety concerns for some stuff going on.
That comes back to the long-term, look at the harbor
Yeah.
plan and the Parks and Rec plan.
Trying to see where we are.
But if you have health and safety concerns, it's worth discussing.
Yeah, I feel it is, definitely. So thanks. I appreciate it.
Any other new business? All right, we can entertain a language for going to closed session.
All right, we would need a motion from a council person to move that the council meet in closed session under section 8E of the Open Meetings Act, specifically under section 8E, to consult with the city attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with two cases. One is Williams versus the city and the other is Potter versus the city. And that motion should include a statement that meeting in an open meeting could have a detrimental effect on the litigating or settlement strategy of the city.
I'd be glad to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Dyke.
I'll second.
And Leo,
Yes.
Al Dyke,
Yes.
Nancy Rondell,
Yes.
John Cups,
Yes.
and Matt Revere.
Yes.
We are now in closed session.
Thank you.
Anybody have any complaints about our chairs movement?